I got the buffer for it. So. Okay, the next agenda item is to get an overall broadband report from Office of Broadband Development. So with that, I have Diane with us. So Diane, turn it over to you.
Good morning, and sorry you're all stuck with me again because the State Broadband Leaders Network, twice a year they do a conference, bring everyone together, and it's right now in Philadelphia, and it's attached to the National Digital Inclusion Alliance Conference. And so we have Hannah and Megan at that, and we have Bree and Jen and Michelle and Anna. We have 6 people out in Philly right now. And so I get to do the wrap up again. But Bree did want to be here. She was going to try to pull away, and I'm like, just be present out there. We can cover this here. We did also add a new staff member yesterday. I was in St. Paul, Ace Wesselman, who will be providing us with some in-house GIS expertise. I think he's participating. I'm not going to have him put himself on screen yet since it's just his second day, but you'll get to meet him for sure if you're at the conference or the Connecting One Minnesota event on March 12th. We also have postings for 2 positions that are closed today. The first is for a broadband program accounting lead, and that person will be helping us with all of, especially the financial reporting that we have to do with the federal funding for both the Treasury capital projects funding and with the BEAD funding, and keeping track of all of those accounts, because we have our staff time, for example, is like we're working on 4 different accounts, office money, border-to-border money, capital projects money, BEAD money, and just keeping track of all those dollars. And then on top of that, each project, we'll have to keep track of the money that goes to each project from all those accounts. And so we're hiring someone to help us with that. And then we are also, as you know, Jen Frost was promoted to being our Broadband Grants Administrator Supervisor. And so we're backfilling behind her. And so that position is also, there's a grant administrator position open. Both of those closed today. So hopefully we will possibly have some new information on new hires. I don't know that it'll move that fast by March, but by the April meeting. And then if you're not on the list to get our regular updates on broadband, that is happening on a more regular basis. Anna Price Northcutt, who was introduced, she had started December 20th. That's one of her jobs. So we're trying to get those out on a more regular basis. Because we have someone that can do that now, and because there's so much going on. So you should sign up for that to stay on top of what's all coming out of our office. And then next I'm going to talk about the BEAD update, then I'm going to talk about the digital equity update, and then I'm going to talk about upcoming events. So for the BEAD update, as you know, we submitted our volume 1 and volume 2 of our initial proposal on December 22nd. NTIA has identified areas for curing in volume 1, and those are due by Tuesday. So we're working on getting the information back to them that they wanted. We have taken the position that we want our program to align with state law, that you're eligible for funding if you don't have a wired broadband connection. And we are asking NTIA if they are not going to agree with that, which I suspect will be the case, that we want a letter from a top official at NTIA, which is what our lawyers tell us we need to vary state law requirements. So if we get that, then we'll shift our position to trying to have the burden of proof in the BEAD challenge process placed on the provider by providing documentation to support our position that fixed wireless is not reliable, and it shouldn't be the citizens that have to do speed tests to roll up to an eligible entity that can actually challenge in the BEAD challenge process, which would be a nonprofit or a local government. But the burden of proof to prove that reliable broadband service is available should be on the provider. So assuming we get our initial position rejected, that you should have a wired broadband service so that we have to consider fixed wireless. We're trying to make the case then in our volume 1 that the burden of proof should be on the provider. So this whole process could take a little bit of time to work through on the volume 1.
Are other states having that issue as well, or are taking a position on that? Or?
There are only a few that have gone through. NTIA has now come out with some boilerplate language that we can use that if it's cellular fixed wireless, so the stuff provided by T-Mobile, Verizon, and AT&T, where you're going to be able to make the case. But the fixed wireless over licensed spectrum that's provided by some of our other providers, like in Minnesota it would be MediaCom, Midco, Broadband Corp might have a little bit of it. I think MVTV might. That's the area that we still would have to address and come up with some examples. And we know there's over-reporting. We've got some documentation that we'll provide to NTIA once we get to that step of the hearing process. So once that volume 1 has been approved, then we can open our B challenge process. So since we're going to be doing some back and forth that we know, and we don't know what or when we'll get final approval from NTIA on the volume 1, the timing is a little bit up in the air. We, at this point, wouldn't expect our B challenge process to start until April. So there'll be more to come on that. I can tell you that Missouri and Washington State are using the same vendor for their broadband or their B challenge portal. And so if you're interested in how that will look, some of the parameters changing based on what is approved in our volume 1, you might want to look at Missouri and Washington states. One of them might not be terribly public, but those 2 states. And then there are other states that will be coming online using that same vendor.
They have completed, Missouri and Washington have completed volume 1, and they're in
the volume 1 has been approved.
And then they're in the challenge phase.
Yes.
Okay.
And NTIA on the volume 2, which we also submitted it December 22nd, NTIA has indicated that its hearing requests will be provided. I don't have them quite yet, right? Today. Later today is the target. So then we'll be working to cure that. I also have to cure our semi-annual report by next Thursday. So I'll be doing a lot of curing. I should be a doctor. And then one other development is that NTIA has some new guidance out on the historic preservation review, shifting some of that responsibility to the states. So I know we're hearing a lot of concern from our broadband providers that are working on projects with state funding and capital projects funding about the time it's taking to get through some of that. So we may be looking at potentially our office contracting with someone so it doesn't go to the state historic preservation office, but we would do it a little bit maybe more under our control. I know in one case it's costing a provider a whole year's worth of time, which is increasing their cost by about $3 million. And that's that provider. So that's kind of where we're at with BEAD. On the digital opportunity update, I got this information from Hannah. They also had to cure their digital opportunity plan, and those provisions were submitted to NTIA on February 9th. NTIA has yet to provide a capacity grant notice of funding opportunity. So that's where they'll lay out how you apply for and get the capacity grants that the states or the eligible entities are eligible for, and then that we would sub-award for the digital equity side of things. So that NOFO is not out yet. There is not information about how much capacity grant funding Minnesota or any of the other eligible entities are in line to receive. And again, that was I'm paralleling it with BEAD. We had the BEAD NOFO in May of 22, and then in June of 2023, we got our BEAD funding amount. So neither of those things have occurred yet on the digital equity side. There's no NOFO, there's no announcement of funding. And we don't even know when those will be available. And then just as you're probably all aware, February 7th was the last day to submit new applications for the Affordable Connectivity Plan. That's that $30 a month credit and users can receive on their bill for their broadband service under the FCC program. and that's up to $75 on tribal lands. That has not been funded by Congress. It's several $billions just to get it, another year out of that program. So those funds are expected to run out in April or May if Congress doesn't appropriate further funding. That is not looking likely. And I think we had the discussion before about that. That just rolled into making it even more and more difficult to make the business case for infrastructure because you've got a 5 to 10% of your customer base that may not subscribe. So your take rates are going to be lower. Low-income households can't afford to purchase service. All right, on a more positive note, some of the upcoming events, we do have our celebrating 10 years of Connecting One Minnesota. Registration for that is open and it is limited to 300 people in person, and then there will be a virtual option. March 12th at the Earl Brown Heritage Center in Brooklyn Center. So you can bet there will be another snowstorm March 11th. And then legislative session has begun. Daryl went over it. I do know that Bree has already been called upon to testify. She's giving an update, an overview to both the Ag House and the Senate committees next week, and then the Capital Investment Committee also in February. So she will have some of her time redirected to the legislature. Round border to border and lower population density round 9 announcements should be coming out by mid-March. We're in the middle still of reviewing those. Those are the applications that were submitted December 7th. We have about 30 million for traditional border to border. That was oversubscribed 2 to 1, so we'll be able to fund a number of those. And then the lower population density, we have 20 million, but that was oversubscribed by about 4 to 1, and that's the one where you can get up to 75% funding. So only about a quarter of those will be able to fund. Line extension, the first round of those, that's for households and businesses can register their address. We discussed those were awarded in the first round in December. The second round is out for bid. Those bids are due later this afternoon, and Carol is our portal person for that. So she's watching this, but she's staying in front of her computer to make sure none of our potential bidders have any issue with getting into that portal to get there. And then lastly, plans are still on for that 5-week webinar we talked about again, Broadband Development Tuesday training series, Navigating Plus. I guess that's the new permitting, land use, and state systems. So that's where one Tuesday we'll have DNR, another Tuesday SHPO, another Tuesday MnDOT talking about the process for getting permits if you need to cross state lands, have a state agency review. That's happy to take any questions.
Questions for Diane? On the BEAD funding, Dan, Tommy, also for you, so you mentioned Missouri and Washington are sort of in that challenge phase now. Where are some other states that are probably a little further ahead? Is it just those two?
No, Louisiana is they're done, I think, with their challenge process. Are they done adjudicating all of them now too?
They're still adjudicating, but they're very close.
Okay. And Kansas?
It's closed.
The challenges are closed, they're adjudicating?
What happens next now? So the challenge phase is over, and then?
Yeah, so the state opens the portal, challenges go in, state adjudicates the challenges, then they send the results of that to NTIA for review. And that really boils down to, did you run the process that you said you did? Did you do the adjudications that you said you did? Yep. And then they can open up for the final proposal where folks actually put in their applications for funding.
And the state put in the application in, or is that the provider?
No, the provider is going to the state.
Okay. So the state will say this is how much is available, and then the providers will apply for those funds.
Yeah, and then
the purpose of the BEAD challenge process is to establish that final list of locations that are eligible for BEAD.
Correct. Yeah. So then, based off of that, number of those locations, the providers that could serve those locations, and then the funding available, and submissions are made.
Yeah, so the 365 days starts with the volume 1 approved?
The volume 2.
Volume 2, because they need to know. The volume 2 has like the score, yeah, that's right, the scoring criteria and everything in that. And some of the requirements, so providers need to know what the requirements are going to be before they maybe decide they want to bid.
Okay.
So, yeah. But the volume 2s should be approved during that 90 to 120 day period that the challenge process is running.
It's running. Okay, got
The idea being that ideally your challenge process doesn't eat into your 365 days, so that providers can know what the actual map is going to look like before the window opens to start applying.
it. Okay. So realistically, so if you take Louisiana or Kansas that are really low, the challenge process is over, and now it's with NTIA, like, when would actually funding get to the provider once they've done the application?
The final proposal, that 1 year window, that's also going to have a review period by NTIA.
Yeah.
And then once if there's curing, that'll go back and take some extra time. So if, say, Louisiana, if they're done in the next couple of days,
Yeah.
that would start their 1 year clock has already started. So if we say, February-ish, February 2025, they have 30 days of curing, March, then that would, NTIA would say, yep, this is how you're going to get to interim for all, funding is released, and then the state would be awarding it to the provider. Yeah.
But it's possible Louisiana might not take the full year.
Oh, yes, if you don't need to take the full year, if you don't want to take the full year, you don't have to.
So they have the full year.
They don't have
Okay. The only reason I'm asking is just kind of gives us a perspective on like, so how this is going and what the where we stand in that. So, okay.
Can I ask?
Sure. Yeah.
In the challenge process, is this still the challenge process that like local governments can interact with? And
The BEAD challenge process, the only eligible challengers are local governments, nonprofits, and providers.
okay,
So there'll be like a 30-day window where those challenges can be made. And we're going to try to open that up earlier so folks can do like speed tests, but it's a very high bar. I mean, assuming we have to go that route, very high bar, 3 speed tests. And then they get rolled up and submitted by the local government or a nonprofit. That's a 30-day period. And then the providers have a chance to rebut for 30 days. And then there's the adjudication where the state decides. Just match the burden.
the reason I ask is we're having our, AMC is having our legislative conference next week, I believe it is. And in the Transportation and Infrastructure Policy Committee, we'll be having a presentation from one of our member counties on their experience with working towards getting organized to do a challenge like that. And so I'm hoping that maybe that'll encourage some of our other counties in attendance to say, oh, maybe we could do this too and participate in that process. So, and the other thing that I wanted to add to for the Affordable Connectivity Program, the National Association of Counties we had some staff here, I didn't go, but NACO had their annual legislative conference in DC. President Biden spoke at it, and there was some significant advocacy to extend the ACP out there. So we're trying to do our part too.
Yeah, and there have been by the governors and by the state broadband office executive directors. I mean, it's just the dysfunction in Congress.
No.
Also one thing about the dates, so for Minnesota, we're going to go through the process, but it could be summer of 25 before we see some of this funding, potentially, maybe sooner. Depends, like there's all sorts of things that have to happen, right? But irrespective of being this legislative session, it's going to be another year where no federal funding's coming. So now what happens within this 1 year, and this may be in this legislative session, I would have to make that clear. yeah, there's dollars coming, not for another year. So we're gonna lose yet another construction season.
Well, and once we have our final proposal approved, then we can fully execute the contracts. So if we're in the third quarter, providers may want to hold off on fully executing the contract
26.
till 26 because they have 4 years to build, and they might not want their clock starting in November. Because the ground is frozen. We're at a disadvantage, yes, with
the weather. Yeah, so taking out this winter, yes.
Yes, taking out this
winter. Okay, well, that's good to know, right? So for you, some of the things you put forward. So, Brianna, do you have a question?
Yeah, thank you. So the challenge process is definitely an area that many of us at the local level are talking about, and definitely representing local units of government and like, what is our role? And I know, Diane, we had a very short conversation about this, and perhaps it still hasn't been worked out, but 30 days is just not that long. And to mobilize our entities that have capabilities of submitting, what are some things maybe to anticipate, or what are some of the activities that you're projecting will be included in that challenge process, and how might we mobilize folks, and who are those people?
Well, we're hoping that part of the problem is we're working to get the contract signed with full contracting process at the state level. Don't get me started. So we can't actually even like actively engage with the company that we're using for the portal because we don't have a signed contract yet. So the plan is that company will help bundle up those challenges by like county level or by like the speed tests or the documentation from a person who might have a letter from a provider that says, yes, it shows we can get service to you, but we've checked and we can't. To help bundle those, but you should, if you're at the local government level and you're interested, you should be going through and identifying what addresses should be eligible for BEAD funding. So when we have that final list that's put out for the challenge process, we'll have a list that we start the challenge process with, that you can do a comparison and say, okay, that list is showing as eligible, we're good there. This list, this address isn't showing as eligible it should be, so that you can track the addresses that you know should be eligible for BEAD, but maybe aren't showing on that preliminary list that starts the process.
Okay, other questions for Diane? All right, thank you, Diane, for that update. Good. Okay, moving on to the last topic for the day is just an update from subgroups. I know several of you have had a chance to sort of meet as a subgroup for the first time. A speaker for the group has been selected. And again, not a lot of expectation out of this first meeting. It was just a chance for the folks to get to know each other and select the speaker. And then the goal is, again, not to do a lot of work in the subgroup. So it's not extra work that's required. It's just some meetings in between our task force meetings, and particularly in these next couple of months, some of the things I would expect the team to bring forward is like, okay, who would you want to hear from at the larger task force, right? Like, given the area, whether it's the affordability or whether it's the workforce aspect of it, like what are some speakers that we can bring to the overall task force that would be good to listen to? So that may be just that. Then as we roll more into the second half of the year, would be what are some challenges that the group has identified in that particular topic, and then what are some of the recommendations that potentially come forward. Again, they don't need to be fully fleshed out recommendations. That could be done with the full task force. The goal is to do the work here, but just to kind of get the juices going and some ideas started, that's really the purpose of this. So again, not putting a whole lot of burden, not putting a lot of burdens on the speakers either, right? So it's just a way to help us get organized. It seemed to work really well in the past. So that said, I'll just kind of go through the various subgroups and just get a feel for how was the first meeting, what were some discussions, and then predominantly what questions do you have for myself or for me or for the larger task force that we should be considering. So with that, maybe Brian, I'll start with you.
Excuse me, I caught a cold on my way down here. So I'm Brian Hood. I work for Fond du Lac Communications on Fond du Lac Reservation. We reach out to about 1,800 homes in Carleton, St. Louis County with fiber to the home. The group, our subgroup met, and of course our topic was ACP funding, and that directly affects about a third of my customers. The whole ACP process, I don't know if any of you guys are boots on the ground with this or not, but I am. And this whole process was very time consuming, very difficult to implement. And to make it a success was a huge task for my staff and I. And now we have to send out letters to customers saying, sorry, it's all done, which is disappointing because that really helped families afford the internet. And the Fond du Lac band, we strive to make it affordable for people. We want people to be able to use it and afford it, and this is devastating. So that was our topic of conversation. How can we make it affordable for people who can't afford it? When we're reaching out to all these homes and spending tens of thousands of dollars to put fiber internet there and they can't afford it. What's the point? So that's it for that group.
Okay. Yeah, I have one question, and maybe you can help us. Is there a way to find out by state how much ACP funding was going? Okay.
Yeah.
No, maybe not for now, but maybe just to identify how much of ACP is Minnesota taking advantage of. That'd be interesting information, maybe even for that.
Yes, it would be very interesting.
So even if, obviously federally, there's a lot of push for people to do things. The question is there something at the state level that we can do?
Right. Whatever we can do to make it so people can afford this.
Yeah.
A big investment for all of us, and people can't afford it.
Yeah. So. Anything that the team subgroup needs at this moment or anything like that?
I don't think so, Teddy. Thank you.
All right, for the economic opportunity and workforce, Adam?
Yep, so we met, only half of the group was able to meet. We had some tech issues and some stuff come up, so there's only 2 of us out of the 4 of us. What we did cover is on the economic opportunity side, we're going to be looking to find speakers similar to the Association of Minnesota Counties to talk about what they're hearing from their communities or their constituencies. Are there projects that are being held up by connectivity? Are there businesses looking to expand, but the connectivity is their main issue and they aren't expanding? How can we help them? How can we streamline the system to get them developing more job opportunities for folks? And then on the workforce side of it, we're hoping to talk to grant recipients of previous rounds. Maybe they're workforce folks that are the ones similar to, was an ECE last meeting that said they were having a hard time finding contractors to even bid on the work. Is that driving up the price? Having a lack of contractors in the area, especially locally, if we're mobilizing out-of-state contractors come in, is it driving up the price? What can we do as a task force to educate contractors on the opportunity that already exists here today? So we'll be looking to maybe talk to some of the grant recipients, workforce folks, and see what kind of jobs are being created out of the grant money. Are they quality jobs? Are they going out-of-state jobs? Are there contracting opportunities that they would like to open up to more groups? So we'll be looking to do that.
Questions or concerns that came up with the subgroup that like task force level?
Not yet.
Thank you, Adam. That was a good update. And then I don't think Daniel was joining in today. I don't see him on the list, but in that subgroup, I know Brianna and Paul, you're both part of it. Maybe just give us a feel for kind of how that discussion went and any questions that maybe have come up.
Paul, do you want me to take it?
Please do. Thanks, Brianna.
You bet. So our committee was able to meet. Paul was the only one unable to attend. The very 30-minute time frame. We actually got through a lot of discussion, so I was very pleased about that. There seems to be a mutual desire to, of course, continue to support the funding opportunities that are available through the state, both and the federal opportunities. We need to continue to push for state resources to move the needle on deployment, and of course, digital equity for those inclusion efforts. We also talked about workforce recruitment, a need to really establish some funding opportunities within there to help support that engagement, potentially with Career Force, Department of Labor, whatever those agencies are, to really try and position opportunities to align with the labor needs for that. We talked about speed goals, a need to adjust some of those goals and make sure we're on a good schedule as we get closer to 2026. As it relates to more policy activities, preservation of grant programs, the definition of wireline continues to be part of that conversation as well. Also potential discussion around adjusting scoring and match requirements to allow some of our smaller, less resource communities to engage and be successful in moving forward with deployment. And then of course, mapping continues to be on the discussion as well. You know, we need to figure out, I think, a stronger way in which we can utilize the existing resources and enhance those opportunities. So as decisions are being made, as projects are being defined, there's better understanding of truly what the needs are, hopefully through our need challenges as well, that will help provide clarity on what that direction looks like. So I'm going to also offer up, because just stemming off of my own experience and the things that were discussed at the very beginning, is the need to really find strategy to support community planning. I can tell you Redwood County would never have gotten to the point where we are today had there not been an investment of capacity and resources. And so we've lost our technical assistance through the Blandon Foundation, and we don't currently have a supplement, and that is a concern. We have a lot of communities who do not have local champions. And so how do we really ensure that we are achieving our goal of border to border and supporting those counties in which don't have that local champion or even the funding and capacity necessary to move them forward? So I just want there to be consideration of, you know, whether it's, I don't know that we could talk Blandon back into it, but right, is there a place where University of Minnesota Extension could play a role? Can we contract out? What does that look like? We just can't forget about those communities and counties that don't have that local champion. Or how might we get more ACC fellows?
Well, yeah, and that may be an interesting one, and that actually gives me an idea of maybe you having that as a speaking, as a topic that we could bring to the task force as well, right? So we can get people in that.
Yeah, that's a terrific idea, Teddy. Especially, are we in our third cohort?
Yeah.
Third or fourth even? I mean, I think there's a long history there, I think, that really could demonstrate the value of what that program is providing, and especially at a national level, but, you know, certainly locally.
Yeah.
Terrific idea.
Absolutely. Okay. Thank you for that update, Brianna, and for stepping in when Daniel was able to be here today. So with that kind of get a feel for, you know, as we do these subgroups, there'll be very short, brief updates like this going forward, and then as we get closer to the latter part of the year, we'll expand more time for this and sure a lot more discussions on recommendations and challenges. So, which is exactly what that's designed for. So with that, I'll open it up for any questions, comments, concern on any topic from anyone on the task force first. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions from anyone on the task force. So from anyone else, I see Barbara, I see you have your hand up, so please go ahead. If you're speaking, Barbara, we can't quite hear you yet. Your hand up, and it looks like you're. Yeah, Yeah, the mic might not be working. You're off mute, but somehow the mic's not coming, the voice is not coming through.
But does the yellow mean that someone's speaking or?
Yellow means the hand is up, but then the blue box usually is like this. There's no sound coming. It's not sound coming through.
I think whatever input she has selected for her mic is just like bunk.
Yeah, the input for the mic may not be working. Okay. Well, she's working through that. Maybe hopefully we'll see her voice come through. But any other comments from anyone else? There. Is there anything you want to add today? Good.
Lots of work to be done yet, but step by step, getting there.
Okay. All right, Barbara, I'd love to have you to hear your voice. If she call at our end. Calling in, yeah, maybe. Yeah, maybe you could try to dial in with the phone. Or you can put your question in the chat or comment there. That's better. Still don't hear anything. All right. I apologize. Well, let's see if there's something came through.
Can you see the chat on your end, Teddy?
Yeah.
Okay.
Metronet did not apply for the line extension requirement, but it's not.
I think what she means is Metronet didn't bid on any of the locations from homes and businesses that registered with our office for that line extension grant, where we're able to pay up to $25,000 to get service built to an individual home or homes along the road, because it's required that you participate in the Affordable Connectivity Program or any successor. That is a requirement because that's not state money funding the line extension program. That is Treasury Capital Projects funding.
Okay.
And as part of their effort to ensure affordability, have to participate in
ACP first before you, yeah.
or its successor to be eligible to get that funding.
Got it. But ACP's gone now.
So if there is a successor program, which who knows what it might entail,
Yeah.
you'd have to agree to sort of an unknown thing.
Yeah. So there has to be some other thing. If that's not there, either that requirement's not there anymore, or.
Well, what is unknown is what's the successor program going to look like that they're committing to do to get this money. And, we're talking $25,000 per location. Most of the awards were smaller amounts, $50,000, $100,000, $200,000. Is it worth having to stand up a whole program for your company for that small amount of funding?
Yeah. Okay. Okay, that's something I'll have to be thought about. So, makes sense. Thanks for bringing that up. Any other questions or comments? Anything else? I'd like to thank everybody for your time and participating in the conversation. And I know the meeting in March, Carlos has sent out, we couldn't make the one date work on, I believe it was March 14th, whatever, so we moved to the 21st of March. 20th of March, yeah, to 20th of March. So hopefully you're able to make that. Yeah, we'll see you then. If not, if there's any other questions or anything else that comes up before that, please reach out anytime.
Where's the next one at?
I was thinking that. I don't know. Okay. Decided that, yeah, but we'll let you know. If most likely a date, but if if something else comes up, I'll let you know. Some of that depends also on the topic itself, so depending on what the bulk of our topic might be, if there's a location worth going to, we'll do that. If not,
Great, thank you.
awesome. Thanks, everyone. Have a good rest of the day. Bye.
Lunches are outside on the table.